This may be the most top-heavy roster in Ole Miss history, at least during my lifetime. There's still some work to do, but there's an interesting conversation that is developing. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast out there. I'm your host, Stephen Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member as well. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network in the entire country. That is all because of fans like you watching content like this. Thank you very much for that. On today's show, we're going to talk about this unique thing that this Ole Miss football team could have this season. I say could have because it's not quite finalized. We'll find out maybe as soon as Thursday if that is finalized, but the assumption is Trinidad Chambliss is going to be back, which means this roster has a chance to be the most next level roster, top heavy roster in Ole Miss history. We'll talk about that as we go. But first, we want to remember we're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube, and a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is, your team every day. Today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. The winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. All right, so we're not going to start with Trinidad Chambliss because he is the story all week. That's going to take up most of the oxygen of what's going on. But there was an article by ESPN for the way too early Heisman candidates for 2026 that they put out. In that article, two Ole Miss players were listed, and we're going to start with Kewan Lacy. Kewan Lacy was listed as having a more than a chance to win the Heisman Trophy, but he's on that list of being a potential favorite. And by the end of the year, he was very good. Now, he had 306 carries over 15 games last season. That's averaging 20 carries per game. He had 1,567 yards, 24 touchdowns for the, I guess at that time he was a redshirt freshman maybe. He'll be a sophomore, second year of eligibility or whatever that might be. Remember, I always say eligibility is a myth, but that should be what the clock looks like for Kewan Lacy. You're talking and looking at someone who over the course of the season got better and better and better and better. And from the beginning, I was getting laughed at from, say, John Neighbors, the host of Locked On Razorbacks, for saying that Kewan Lacy reminded me of Darren McFadden. And he was like, no, you're not going to compare a running back to Darren McFadden. And at the beginning of the season, he wasn't putting up those 100-yard games. By the end of the year, he was an elite running back that ended up in the top 3 in the Doak Walker Award. He was a finalist for that award. One of the better, if not the best, returning running back in the country. That is one thing to keep in mind with Kewan Lacy. He is one of the best running backs returning in the country, because this crazy reality that people have to figure out once we find out about Trinidad, which, like I said, if he does not get cleared, I will be absolutely floored. But you have Kewan Lacy, who is likely the best running back in the country. Ahmad Hardy is really the only running back that has an argument against him. Kewan Lacy, the best running back in the country. Trinidad Chambliss, if he gets cleared on Thursday, which we all think he will, best quarterback in the country. And then on the other side, you have Lucas Carnero, who is the best field goal kicker in the country. And we talked about going in, heck, it was probably a couple of weeks ago that Ole Miss having those coming back. That's 3 players that affect winning the most coming back at their positions. And that is pretty cool. And Ole Miss had to go in knowing that they had this in store. And Walker Jones did a fantastic job with Pete Golding and the position coaches of getting these players back on campus. because it allowed them and said, hey, we need a tight end and we need a couple of wide receivers. The NCAA is slow playing this. The NCAA is using Trinidad. So we cannot count on Caden Lee staying. We need to find wide receivers, and Darrell Gill Jr. and Jonte Cook and the return of Deuce Alexander is going to be an elite level wide receiver with Horatio Fields, and at the tight end position, Michael Smith coming in. This offense seemingly has checked every single box that they needed to check to be an explosive offense in 2026. I'm excited to see exactly how it looks with John David Baker. Are we going to see more 20, 21, 22 personnel from Ole Miss with the advent of all those running backs that got signed? Joshua Dye, Mekhi Fields coming in. Can you see a situation that it might look a little bit different? You have the young backs as well that have a chance to be very good. I'm telling you, this spring that's going to start in about a month, essentially, is going to be a knife fight. It's going to be an absolute knife fight, and I'm curious to see exactly how it goes, really. So when we come back, we will turn the page a little bit and talk about, okay, Trinidad Chambliss gets his clearance. He's on this Heisman watch list as well. What does Trinidad Chambliss bring to your team that, say, Deuce Knight does not? And what would it look like in either situation as well? So stick around. We'll tell you all about that. You know, the Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. That is why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care most about, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to all of the action. The drama of curling matches that start slow and somehow get intense really fast. Speed skating races decided by a mere inch. Hockey games that feel different right from the opening face-off. Even niche events become must-watch because when you're fully locked in to the competition, FanDuel keeps the entire Olympic experience engaging from start to finish. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. The new year is here, and it's the perfect time of year to reset your routine and refresh your space. If you're spending more time at home, you might as well love how it looks, right? And how it feels. That's why you should return to Wayfair, the one-stop shop for getting your home back on track. From bedding to mattresses to storage solutions for every room, Wayfair makes it easy to start the year fresh. Listen, my wife just recently had a decent size order of bookcases and rugs and statues and all of this stuff. I'm like, Becky, where are we going to put all of this stuff? And she was like, we will find a place for it. It's that good. You have to pay attention to everything that is going on, or else you'll end up with a lot of stuff in your house, but it does look good. She was right on that situation. So whether you're updating that living room, organizing your space, or upgrading your work from home setup, Wayfair's huge selection makes it easy to find exactly what works for your style and budget. I love that I can find pieces that match my style without spending a fortune. Shopping is easy and delivery is smooth, and everything arrives exactly like it is expected. It honestly made getting back into the routine this year feel a lot more manageable. Getting organized, refreshed, and back on track this year for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. And hiring isn't just about finding somebody willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates to match what you're looking for, Indeed sponsored jobs, well, that's the move. Because instead of hoping the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people that fit your specific criteria like skills, certifications, and location. That is what I like about Indeed. You can get that it's specific and target exactly what you need. It saves time because you're spending way less energy sorting through the mismatches. And with Sponsored Job, your post just gets seen by candidates who actually are a fit. And here's a stat that kind of says it all. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data, by the way, worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Listeners of this show will get $75 in sponsored job credit to help your job get the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Do it the right way with Indeed. All right, do us a favor, like, subscribe, and comment on the video. Subscribe to the podcast on whichever audio podcast you're listening to, and give it a 5-star review. It costs nothing, but it keeps all of this free. And thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Ole Miss with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more. All for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonolemess.supercast.com or check the link down in the show notes to learn more. Part of that is a Discord server membership for Locked On. If you join that, I will just go down to the Locked On Ole Miss part, sign in there and talk about it. It's like I'm here. I will give you a link to the Locked On Ole Miss specific private group chat Discord server. We like to have a good time. So I will do that for you if you go ahead and sign up. All the people that have signed up, there's obviously not as many signed up to the Discord server as we'd like. It's just the numbers aren't exactly adding up. So help me out there if you would, please. Thank you. All right. So the last thing is we mentioned Trinidad Chambliss was also mentioned by ESPN on the way too early Heisman list, giving Ole Miss 2 players on the Heisman list from the very beginning. This is one of the more talented rosters that Ole Miss could potentially have, and definitely in my lifetime do that. Whenever you have William Eccles, who led the nation also in pass hurries as a 3 technique, and when you see him get the defensive Sugar Bowl MVP, you can see that that's kind of a Walter Nolan type situation loading. Sontaran Perkins as a junior coming in, I think. You look at the linebackers that got recruited, Luke Farrelly, Taj Butler, those guys on the linebacker and in the secondary, those guys did some work as well. But the talent overall on this roster is great, but it still might even be a little bit top heavy because of how elite the top of this roster is when you look at Kewan Lacy, Lucas Carnero, and Trinidad Chambliss. So Trinidad Chambliss, elite quarterback. If he is the quarterback, Ole Miss is literally going to be in a position to win every single ball game they play. He's that good. For whatever reason, if you look at what he did last year coming in cold, he basically got to Ole Miss in June. By August, he was ready to go. In September, he had the keys to the car, and he never gave the job back because of how elite he was. He finished 8th in the Heisman Trophy voting after coming in the second game with Austin Simmons getting hurt. It's pretty unreal. And when you look at the fact that neither one of them are likely to win the Heisman Trophy because they're likely going to split the vote with each other, that's okay. It's just the elite factor of what's going on. Because normally when you play Ole Miss, you know who you have to stop. It's like, okay, there's that guy. You know, even when it was Jackson Dart and Trey Harris, you knew, it's like, okay, that's the guy I have to stop. I have to stop Jackson Dart. I have to take away his running or something like that. Or the easiest way to take away Jackson Dart is to lock down Trey Harris because that could affect the passing game. That was the story of defensive coordinators coming in. With 2 players elite like Trinidad Chambliss and Kewan Lacy at the start, and with an offense with Ole Miss that all you have to do is get to the 40-yard line and you have points, essentially, this is a bear. And especially now that they've added receivers and pieces on the outside to throw to. But Kewan Lacy and Trinidad Chambliss makes this offense scary. And the fun part about this to me, okay, is the thought that Deuce Knight is going to learn a year how to play quarterback like that. Because everybody talks about copycats, and we are all copycats. When we see something that is working, we try to copy that, for lack of a better word. For instance, like when Nick Saban was having all of that success, they were saying, well, we're going to discount the fact Nick Saban and get somebody from that tree because everybody that's doing that should be success. We're trying to copy what they're doing. They did that with Alabama for really hot and heavy over the course of the last 5 years. It happens in professional sports all the time. You always hear how it's a copycat league. But it's also in the practice field. If somebody is successful, you're going to try and emulate them. And Deuce Knight, learning for a year behind Trinidad Chambliss, trying to emulate the way he plays the position, is only going to help him. He's only going to get better doing that, because this is what Trinidad Chambliss does better than anybody else, in my opinion. He makes decisions and gets the ball out in a hurry. That's the reason that the sack numbers were so low against Ole Miss, because Trinidad Chambliss just didn't have the ball. They'd throw free access throws to the outside, and when the defense got up on people, they threw over the top of. It was incredibly simple offensively for what Ole Miss did. A couple of base concepts, retrofitted from an Austin Simmons offense that was built for 5 months, turned into a really simple version that Trinidad Chambliss was just unbelievably effective running. And now you're going into this season knowing John David Baker and those guys get to sit in the lab and figure out, this is what Trinidad Chambliss does well. We're going to build the offense around that. We're going to use the concepts that was there last season, but we're going to add this to it. We're going to add an extra step to this. We're going to incorporate Kewan Lacy as a weapon that the defense has to respect. We're going to make pieces on the outside function in a way that keeps the safety from coming down and hurting Kewan Lacy running the football. John David Baker can literally just get in the lab about what is going on and get ready for this. This is 3 major players returning to Ole Miss and being on the roster that affect winning. And that is the big deal. That's the reason the defense was the way it is. That's the reason they attacked the offensive line the way they attacked. They are ready for this season because they have weapons to be extremely dangerous. If on Thursday Trinidad Chambliss comes back with the injunction, Ole Miss is the favorite to make it to the SEC championship game. Favorite to be one of probably the best 2 teams in the Southeastern Conference. I'm going to put Texas in that as well. But those 2 teams, when Ole Miss goes to Austin to take on the Texas Longhorns, that is the game of the year in the SEC, according to me. That is the one that should be circled, underlined, exclamation pointed, the whole 9 yards. That should happen because that has a chance to be a big game. And then add the stuff with the Manning playing against Ole Miss and all of that stuff. It's a big deal. But Ole Miss having these 3 players, including 2 on the way too early Heisman watch list, should get everybody excited. Anyway, thanks for tuning in to today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast. We're going to continue to talk about the football that's coming up in this fall. We're going to talk about Trinidad Chambliss all week as well. We're going to have Dalen Flowers on tomorrow. We're on all the social channels, so check that out as well. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Ole Miss ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonolemmiss.supercast.com to join the club. And for those of you on video, we're going to send you on over to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you check out a second listen. Either Locked On College Football or Locked On SEC is there for you. Good show. Really good. We're going to continue talking about Trinidad tomorrow. but stick around for that, everybody. Hotty toddy, everybody.